deoraita, midrabanan, if it's just a custom. In other words, nothing ever should go through our halachic filters without this question. Someone comes to you and says, I think this is a problem, and my first question is, what kind of problem? Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, maybe it's a big problem, maybe it's a little one, maybe it's significant, maybe it's not. And for the reasons that we're going to also explain in just a little bit, because we have the zechut tonight of going over something that's a little bit more of personal concern. People's outward appearance, people's honor, dignity, respect sometimes are expressed in their clothing and the hashtags that are on them. So we should actually zoom in. We need to be sensitive to these questions as well. I'll tell you something very funny, anecdotally speaking. That every single one of our daughters, 4 out of the 5, because one of them is still working on getting her facial expressions under control. But so far we're 4 for 4 when the first time that you put on like a bow or a pretty ribbon or something on their hair, all of a sudden they're like, wow. Their eyes light up and they get excited, they go and show people, and boys don't do this ever for any reason whatsoever. Even if they did like it, they'd go somewhere to a quiet bathroom, smile and come out so nobody would see them, nobody would make fun of them. So sometimes these halachot of dignity, of honorable, respectable appearance, they don't really make sense to men very intuitively. It's something that we need to learn and appreciate. Or Italian. Let's be fair, tight black shirts, they cost a lot of money. So these questions, they come up and Halakhah handles them. So why do we care, first of all, what's the nature of the Isur? Because we're starting this on a much more theoretical level, we aren't getting into the technical details. What does it matter? Of what consequence is it that laundering clothing on Shabbat should be midoraita or midorabanan? Okay, I can give you at least 4 or 5 answers, but I'd like to hear them from you. Think, flex your halachic muscles. Why does anyone care what the nature of the Isur is? What's the difference? What distinctions would we make?
Well, there's no question of pikuach nefesh or what do we prefer.
Well, if it's pikuach nefesh, even if it's midoraita, we would do it, right? And even if it's sfek pikuach nefesh, we tend to hold the same way. So saving a life isn't a very illustrative example in the sense that we.
And again, except for
we run right away.
You may have a heart attack. You don't have much reason to wash clothing for that.
Right, it might be pikuach nefesh for him.
Yeah.
If it's a nice fancy tie, and all of a sudden he spills espresso on it, so he has to. Okay, but what difference does it make? Who cares? Basically, Emanuele, I'm going to put this on your shoulders.
Maybe
Who cares what the difference is? Huh?
Maybe because if it's midrabanan, I don't know. If there is another action, another mitzvah, another something else to do, we would come before.
Okay.
We would have the
So the expression you're looking for in Hebrew, and this is a perfectly valid response, is bimkom mitzvah la ghizur. In Aramaic, in the place of a mitzvah, or in a situation or a circumstance where a mitzvah is in question, the Hazal, if they made a decree against something, then the decree doesn't apply here. Meaning, it's a footnote. It's a nota bene after every single gzera midrabanan, every edict that Chazal made, just so you know, and there's a few of these by the way, you gave me one example, just so you know, if there's a mitzvah that's not going to be done because you're observing our edict, then our edict shouldn't count. 9 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times. So there's a mitzvah that's supposed to be done, it cannot be done because we decreed something, and therefore we're going to relinquish it. You want an example? I'll give you an example. If I have to do a brit milah on Shabbat, okay? Carrying on Shabbat is asur midoraita or midorabanan? Midoraita.
Except for
What?
We had a discussion 2 years ago.
It's a long discussion. The Rosh, no, he's right. The Rosh tends to favor the interpretation of the Mishnah and the Gemara, Masechet Eruvin, and half of Masechet Shabbat, that carrying was only midorabanan. It was only midoraita in the Midbar, Midbar Sinai, when Am Yisrael was camping in such a formation, and that since then it's only midrabanan. This is a fascinating chidush, because the Sephardim never read this way, and it renders maybe a few hundred pages of Gemara almost obsolete. It's not so clear. This is the Rosh's understanding, there is such an opinion, but if we pit the 3 major pillars of Halakhah, and by the time that the Rav Yosef Karo is redacting the Bet Yosef, so if it's the Rabbi Yitzchak al-Fasi, the Rambam, and the Rosh, the former 2, the Sfaradim, don't even allude to such an understanding. To them it's clear that it's midoraita. You carried something out of, get into the discussion of the Eruv, but you carried something out of one domain into the other, and you're violating Shabbat without a question.
So we're going to have a shiur about that since she was.
We'll have a shiur about this too. We'll have to discuss this as well. Now, here's what happens. It's a Asur Midoraita for me to carry my knife for the Milah from my apartment to your apartment through Rishut Rabim. Okay? So, this would be a problem. This is a mitzvah midoraita against another mitzvah midoraita. And although the Torah permits me to perform a Brit Milah on Shabbat, it doesn't permit me to carry on Shabbat in order to perform the Brit Milah. What happens if I'm carrying somewhere where it's Asur only midorabanan?
If you're carrying, sorry?
I would have to carry from my apartment to your apartment with not Rishut Harabim in the middle, but a Carmelit. For example, the two of us live in the middle of a forest, the Shluch. Okay, it's not Rishut Harabim, it's no man's land. The public doesn't use this space. Or, for that matter, I have to carry from my boat to your boat through the sea. We both fish sea snakes in Vietnam. So I have to go from my pontoon to your pontoon. I'm carrying through the sea. The sea is a Carmelit. It's not Rishut Harabim, it's a Carmelit. A Carmelit is basically a domain through which carrying is only Asur Midorabanan. Why? So you shouldn't come to mistake it, to confuse it with something Asur Midoraita. And we've spoken about this before. Everything Asur Midorabanan is only Asur because there's something Midoraita close or similar to it that we're concerned you'll get it confused. So if I have a Brit Milah to do on Shabbat, if I have to carry, the only way for me to do this Brit is to carry this knife, or I can't find any knife that I can carry, that's already there where the Brit needs to be done, and the only way for me to do it is by carrying through a Rishut that's Asur Midoraita, I can't do it. Maybe I can find another Midorabanan way of doing it. Maybe I can hint to a child or to a non-Jew to carry for me, fine. If it means carrying through a Carmelit where it's only Asur Midorabanan, Chazal themselves didn't mean for a mitzvah like this not to happen only because they made such an edict. They didn't want me carrying Rishut Harabim, and so they made a decree against the Carmelit. But if I carry through, and even this I could probably do with a shinui, maybe carry in the back of my hand, but there might be justification, there are mitigating circumstances for violating something that's only midorabanan in order to perform a mitzvah. That's the point that Emanuela is making. Perfectly valid point. 100%. There are a few other examples like this. You need these things, guys, on your fingertips. Whenever a halachic question comes up, this is what goes through my mind. I do a search, a Google search with these filters. My brain is built that, you tell me you have an issue. Is the issue one of this, or this? And if not, then maybe we can talk. How about this? Bimkom tsa'ar lagazur. Same formulation, different circumstance. Where an edict creates an excessive amount of suffering or pain, etc., often, not always, often, the edict itself is somewhat released. Bimkom tsa'ar lagazur. An example of this would be, a little bit ironically, the 4 minor fasts, aside from Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, where someone who is suffering excessively from the fast is almost exempted from it. And you're looking at me a little bit funny because what's the point of a fast? To have a good time. Like we're taking selfies and balloons and pictures and sprinkling. It's a fast.
No,
we call it ta'anit, the shogeg.
For example?
It's a day of suffering.
A pregnant woman, for example, the suffering is a bit too hard.
Or an elderly individual,
Indeed.
where these, according to Rav Yosef, were never part of, according to the Gemara, to be fair, it wasn't him. They were never part of the original decree because it's assumed that the suffering is too much for them. Same thing for a woman who's nursing. Really, a woman who's nursing is easier to exempt than a woman who's pregnant. But a woman who's nursing, because we presume it's going to be too difficult for her, it's dehydrating, that's the nature of a fast. So according to our understanding of the Gemara, they were never included to begin with. Yes, there was a decree made that we should commemorate the Churban on these 5 occasions. One of them is major, the other 4 are relatively minor. Or well, in the case of Ta'in Tester, it's not exactly directly related to the Churban necessarily. But the original, when the decree was made, it was made such that those who can do it should do it. A little bit of inconvenience I can accept. Major inconvenience, and all of a sudden we just undo the edict. You mustn't have been included in the original edict because Chazal never made an edict that you couldn't live up to. Fine. Other circumstances on Shabbat, sometimes for someone who is sick, so it's not pikuach nefesh, but you have what's called a choleh, sheyesh bo sakana, choleh she'en bo sakana. Choleh sheyesh bo sakana, even someone who is ill, and there is a degree, there's an aspect of danger. It doesn't mean it's pikuach nefesh, but it means that there are certain things, particularly those that are midrabanan, that we're more likely to relax on Shabbat. So it could be that someone is sick. It could be that this potential illness might ultimately develop into something that could become a potential for greater danger. And so under circumstances like that, we might relax something that's otherwise midrabanan. An example of this would be someone who is suffering terribly from a headache, a terrible migraine. As long as you need to lie down, you're considered incapacitated to the point that your health is already a little bit in question. Now, if that's the case, maybe there are certain things that are rabbinic in nature that we would permit that we otherwise normally wouldn't. An example of this would be, potentially, I'm not sure that everyone signs on to this, but taking some kind of a pill on Shabbat, where normally Chazal decreed against using medications on Shabbat. Why did they decree against using medications on Shabbat?
Because they were making it on Shabbat.
Mishum shahiqat samamanim. So you shouldn't come to grind your own tinctures and ointments and mixtures and treatments, etc. So it used to be you would take spices, you would take leaves, you would sit there grinding them. This is definitely asur midoraita. So because of the suspicion that you might prepare something fresh on Shabbat, we forbid you midrabanan from using something that was prepared even before Shabbat. What's the harm done if I grind it before Shabbat? The only interdiction is midrabanan. Maybe I'll run out and I'll have to make more. Maybe I need a different kind of medication. I want to do something on the spot. So I take out my mortar and my pestle and I sit there and I start grinding. So we don't want you doing this. We don't want you doing this for just any reason. Someone who's really suffering, it's pikuach nefesh if I have a bad headache. It's a bad headache. I'll live. I'll lie down. I'll put my head down, and I'll go to a cold, quiet room, and hopefully we'll get through Shabbat. But if it's that bad that you have to lie down, that you can't even stand up anymore, it's not that hard for us to say, look, using some kind of medication that was already packaged is at its worst midrabanan, and maybe in a situation like this of tremendous discomfort, we can release it. So there are a few other examples I can give you. There are other examples that are a little bit more systematic. In other words, anything that you tell a child to do on Shabbat is only midrabanan. Anything that you allude to a goy, to a non-Jew to do for you on Shabbat is only midrabanan. Having a slave and telling him to work on Shabbat is only midoraita. Indicating or telling directly to a non-Jew, a friend, a neighbor, whatever, to do something on Shabbat is asur midrabanan. So you shouldn't come to confuse these people with slaves that you might own. I know it sounds antiquated today, but if you were living in Syria or Iraq, there are plenty of slaves going around the Muslim world, not because all Muslims own slaves, but because they're some of the only people who still do. That having been said, if there are two midrabanans, one on top of the other, sometimes that also makes it a little bit easier. So it could be that, let's say, nobody's sick or suffering, but the mazgan, the air conditioner, tripped the circuit breaker on Shabbat. So maybe for the need of the public, okay? Tzorech tzibur, something that damages or inconveniences the entire tzibur, especially when it comes to tefillah, which is already an obligation. According to us, at least once a day it's midoraita. The Rambam holds the other two midorabanan. So maybe either because there's a mitzvah going on or because it inconveniences the entire tzibur, under such circumstances I might not say directly to a child, please turn on the air conditioner, or to a non-Jew for that matter, by way of allusion, by way of indirect indication. Maybe it's something that's more halachically permissible under certain circumstances than under others. Fine, those are a couple of good examples, but it's always good to run through these things in your mind. Why do we care if it's midoraita or midorabanan? The answer is simple, because under certain circumstances it might make a difference, might be the difference between something being permissible and something being forbidden, or having to suffer through Shabbat because of your own ignorance, as opposed to living a little bit more comfortably within Halakhah, where it's permissible. I actually had a really good example of this earlier this week. Is today Tuesday? Late last week, I take it back. Just involving a topic that I can not really at liberty to discuss right now, but something very interesting, where also it ended up being, at the end of the day, a midrabanan, and we saved someone a lot of trouble. So, on to the topic of this particular melacha. So, laundry on Shabbat, and this is very interesting because it seems a bit counterintuitive. Laundry on Shabbat is asur, let's say as a torada, which means probably it itself is midoraita because it's too directly related to something else that was done in the Mishkan. But what was done in the Mishkan that makes laundry forbidden on Shabbat?
It's not dyeing.
So dyeing would be tzovea. Okay, it's asur on Shabbat, but that's the etymology of the last name sabach in Arabic. The ayin in Arabic, very often the ayin in Hebrew in Arabic became perverted with they put a dot on top of it, it turns the ayin into ghain, the way they pronounce it. So Azza and Ghaza in Arabic, last name Al-Ghazi, if you know somebody who has that last name, Al-Ghazi, they pronounce it today. But Sabah in Hebrew is a painter, Sabah in Arabic means the same thing, it's no color or something. So painting on Shabbat is a separate isur, it's related to it, it's a prior step in the process.
Because about like the fact that they have to immerse some fabric into, like that's why I said dyeing, because I heard like the fact that you cannot.
It's very related,
that you
but
cannot like take a piece of fabric and put it into water, like or any other.
we can't, but it's not specifically the pigment. That's
yeah,
the problem.
okay, it's not about the color.
It has to do with the process of making textiles, of making
Okay.
fabrics, but it's 2 steps before this.
Okay.
What is it that you have to do? Let's say you want to produce an article of clothing, either out of cotton, more likely out of wool. This would be the case. Have you ever seen how wool is made?
Oh, you need to.
You need to bleach it or something?
We need to lelaben, right? You need to white. You need to clean it.
Ah.
What do you have to clean the wool from?
The dirt from the...
No offense to our more sensitive viewers and listeners, but
Blood.
well, first of all, probably yes. You can take the wool off the lamb without necessarily
Right.
causing it to bleed. It depends if this is the final harvest or if there's you're making a reusable resource out of your lamb, out of your sheep at this point. But the melacha midoraita is called melaben, where melaben means to remove the dirt or the excrement, the manure, bits and pieces of grass or of hay, burrs and spines and things that the animals that get stuck in the wool, removing it for the purpose of creating an article of clothing or some kind of fabric from it. In other words, where were they using wool in the Mishkan? Tricky question.
The curtains.
So curtains were one example. Another example would be the
clothing of the...
clothes of the Kohanim. The clothes of the Kohanim have wool in them. So you have the parochet, you have the kaporet, and you also have the clothes of the Kohanim themselves. How do you produce wool, or how do you produce fiber out of wool? Well, first you remove it from the lamb. Then you need to brush out the dirt. You need to wash it in order to get it out. By the way, matnot kiuna, you're familiar with this? What the Kohanim, the gifts that the Kohanim are entitled to? So Reshit Hagez is one of those things. If you slaughter an animal for your own purposes, right? If it's a behemah anyway, so goat, lamb, or cow, adults or babies, it doesn't matter. Then the Kohen gets a part of the right leg. It's a discussion for another time which part. He gets the lower jaw with the tongue and the hair and the skin on it, and he gets the stomach, the very last of the 4 stomachs, the one's most similar to our stomach. Another gift the Kohanim receive is what's called Reshit Hagez. Reshit Hagez means whenever you shear your lambs, the Kohen gets the first piece. How much does he get? He gets 5 sala'im, he gets a certain value worth of it. Meluban velot so'i. That's the language of the Mishnah, meaning it has to be meluban, it has to be whitened, literally, but figuratively it means cleaned or semi-laundered. I don't have to make it into twine, I don't have to make it into yarn, I don't have to make it into a sweater. I just give it to him, but the weight that I give him has to be meluban, it has to be combed clean of manure or excrement or mud, whatever it is, velot so'i, and not full of excrement, meaning that's just the way the lambs are. They're not very clean or intelligent, for that matter, to be fair.
But they're so good.
But they're very tasty. And they're obedient, which makes them easy to grow and easy to manipulate. So, right. Because they're dumb, we eat them. If they were smarter than us, it would be the other way around.
That's true.
So the idea is that in the process of producing an article of clothing, because this used to be done with the wool of lambs, or sheep, really, the sheep are the adults, and because that process begins with, first of all, removing the hair from them, which we also can't do on Shabbat, right? We don't cut hair, remove hair on Shabbat. Second of all, we can't clean the raw material from the dirt that's in it. So it's not so much that because they had to do laundry in the Mishkan that we don't do laundry. It's because in the process of making clothing, you actually have to clean the fibers in the beginning so that you could then color them with pigment. If they were dirty, what does it help? It doesn't matter. You're putting color on top of color. So that's the Isur. Another very interesting detour that we're going to take before we even get into the technical details is that this probably does not apply, and one may go so far as to say even midrabanan, except that the custom has been this way, to synthetic fibers. Synthetic fibers never go through this process to begin with. There's no cleaning process. Nylon, rayon, now you're more knowledgeable about these things than most of us are. Not that you wear, God forbid, any synthetic fibers, but in the event that someone were, possessed by some kind of demon, looking to buy articles of clothing that are beneath your dignity, then anything made of plastic, so rayon, polyester, nylon, lycra, spandex, I guess they're all in the same category. They have absolutely 0% of natural fibers in them, so no wool and no cotton. Sometimes undergarments might, but most others they don't. So if the article of clothing in question is made of synthetic fiber, then probably, let's say that the custom has been to hold that it's midrabanan. Moshe Rabbeinu was never asked about lycra. I don't know if he would have responded even if he were, but it would be beneath him. You understand? It's a fashion thing. So we don't know necessarily from the Mishnah or Gemara that this would be asur midrabanan. The custom has been to treat these articles of clothing as we do others, only for the simple reason that they're easy to confuse. It's easy to get them mixed up one with the other. But you'll see that we're a tiny bit lenient when it comes to certain things. Another one has to do, and this is not necessarily part of the same discussion, but when it comes to squeezing articles of clothing or shaking off water, that's the discussion about the sponge on Shabbat. We'll have to do something on that also at some point.
So what do you call doing laundry on Shabbat that is forbidden? Like what? Because if you're already like putting aside squeezing, like what is doing laundry on Shabbat that is forbidden?
So we do definitely hold that it's asur even to immerse articles of clothing, again, natural fibers and by extension synthetic ones, into any kind of liquid that cleans or
Even
prevents
just
the
water.
spread. Even just water, for sure.
But if we say that synthetic fabric is midrabanan, how do you define midrabanan if the Rabbanan themselves didn't have synthetic fabrics? So who is the midrabanan who forbids that?
So you're asking me why we can't turn on lights on Shabbat?
Well, I found, probably is, yes.
If I can paraphrase your question about laundry, what you really mean is electricity. Right. So,
Correct.
you see, we had this discussion, I think last week or the week before that. Sometimes Hazal used this rabbinic, poetic license to include things or exclude things that they feel need to be included or excluded. So the Gemara doesn't really do this because these questions didn't come up. You'll find, and we'll have to talk about electricity, it's a whole discussion. The Chazon Ish really wants electricity to be asur. He wanted asur midoraita. He didn't want it midoraita, he wanted asur midoraita. Then you have Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who doesn't understand why it's asur midorabanan. So, to the extent that we have discretion that we can exercise over a particular item, you're inevitably going to have to compare and contrast certain things. Meaning, if the purpose of any gzira midrabanan was to prevent you from violating something that's really asur midoraita, today that people wear clothing, I mean, how many articles of clothing today don't have any petrochemical nylon in it? Probably very few. I mean, they're very common in some combination or another. It's very common to have. So most people today wear these things. Maybe even a majority of people wear them. I think natural cotton and natural wool are probably more expensive than plastics at some point. In fact, a lot of the workout clothing today is specifically made of synthetics.
Especially for transpiration.
For
Transpiration.
we say perspiration in English, yeah, but it's in Europe they use transpiration. So, so most of to transpire in English we use the expression like to happen. What transpired on that day was, so it has the same concept of, well, in spiritus, ex spiritus, the same concept of like spirits and things appearing or disappearing.
Right.
So transpiration would be etymologically the process by which something goes from somewhere where it is to somewhere where it isn't.
Which is what happened with sweat.
Right. The first place a European man's head goes, I'm thinking transpire, I'm thinking these sublime metaphysical processes. You're thinking of the gym. Okay, I guess it's the same. So the question is a little bit complicated, meaning how would Chazal have held by synthetic clothing if you were to tell them 2,000 years ago that somebody's wearing plastic, they would laugh at you. If you tell them today that most people wear this and then it's natural fibers are becoming more expensive and less viable, they would tell you, okay, so for the same reasons, because someone could easily confuse one for the other, we would be careful about it. It's a little bit tricky when it comes to, is it midrabanan? Like, did they say this? Is it in the Gemara? No, it's not in the Gemara. It's consistent with the logic by which we have other things in that category.
So wait,
Electricity is much looser in the sense that it's very hard to find why it should be a Asur midrabanan, or at least it's built on more layers of
so it's not at like a third level. So you don't have midoraita, midrabanan, and then something else.
Something else would be so either minhag or the VIP pass into the midrabanan concert would be it's not biruach Shabbat, it's not in the spirit of Shabbat, or that it's Ovadin the whole we said by brushing your teeth on Shabbat that it's the kind of thing that's usually done during the week. It's a secular, profane kind of activity. When it comes to articles of clothing, the understanding tends to be that we it's like a quasi-darabanan, a pseudo-darabanan.
Okay.
So where else does it come up? It comes up, for example, when it comes to sponges on Shabbat. How do you clean your plates on Shabbat? By the way, there's a weird petrochemical fact that using a plastic bag happens to work very well with soap. It's
What?
it's surprisingly easy. You put your hands inside a plastic bag and use soap, just because of the, I think it has to do with the polymer that they make the plastic bags out of. It's ionized in such a way that it's very easy for it to,
So that's how
soap
you
and the
clean
dirt adhere to it.
That's how you do your dishes on Shabbat?
No, that's what they used to do before they came up with,
You never saw
with
that?
something.
Yeah, you never saw that? I still know
plastic
people
bag?
who do that, yeah.
Yeah, I think we
No, I use the brush.
Right, so the brush is a separate question. If a brush is actually considered a fiber for the purposes of squeezing the water out of it, if it absorbs water.
It's the
to begin
same as the toothbrush in this case.
with. Right, correct. We had this discussion last week. So when it comes to Shabbat, what they used to use are the bags that they put onions in.
Okay.
Oh,
It's nylon, it's purely synthetic. And the question is, does that absorb or not absorb, or should we make it midrabanan for accounting purposes, just so that people shouldn't be in the habit of squeezing liquid out of something else? But it all comes down to this, it comes down to malavin. Because the normal way of cleaning fibers, natural fibers, is by immersing them in water and then, well, they didn't have soap back then, right? So laundry was done just this way. You would immerse it in liquid and then you would squeeze out, or you would rub it against, remember those old washboards? I don't know if you ever saw them. So that's what the purpose of the thing was to squeeze water out, and take the dirt with it. So if our concern is that people should confuse us with natural fibers and come to transgress the Isur Midoraita, absolutely, it makes sense that we should, to call it a minhag is, okay, maybe. I don't know if people observe minhagim as much as hear midrabanan. It sounds like someone's going to hell. It just makes it more fun to observe.
Maybe you're going into that, I don't know. What is considered doing laundry?
On Shabbat.
No, what is considered doing laundry? For example, if I have just like a spot, I have to clean.
That was going to be my next
Right,
question.
but so this is why we begin
Happens with
from
the kids so often.
that was
Not
my-
only kids.
One of the other points that I wanted to make was that you don't know laundry till you have kids, man. This is
Not only kids, I'm saying.
by the
general.
metric ton every week, and you didn't know these things. Like they could use soap and get their clothes dirty with it. It's that kind of dirty. So how does this work? Well, because the malacha itself is not laundry per se, it's cleaning anything out of anything. When it comes to natural fibers, it's a very broad topic. In other words, you don't have to be intending for this to be laundry. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a reasonably good substitute in order to be forbidden. So, for example, we won't allow you to pour water onto any article of clothing or to take the clothing and immerse it into liquid. At least not for the purpose of cleaning it.
So I can't put like a little bit of water and just
So if
wash
I,
away
if,
stain
if
or
I,
something?
exactly,
No.
if I, no, okay.
No,
No,
this
that
would definitely be, this would, well, what you can do, we can talk about it more practically. Let's start with what you can't do. It's always more fun to
Okay.
know what's a sur. So, on Shabbat, it's a sur for me to immerse an article of clothing into any kind of liquid that's meant to clean it. Could be just water, but so much the more so if it has soap or anything else in it. It's a sur for me to pour water or any kind of cleaning liquid onto the article of clothing. Sometimes you're wearing something that's otherwise clean and you have a little bit of dirt on it, so just pour a little bit of water, some soap, a club soda, baking soda, whatever. Get it out. Peroxide is really good at this, by the way. Ask me how I know. It's really good at cleaning blood stains. Peroxide. So if it's your blood or someone else's, no one needs to know. But the best way to get peroxide out of any article of clothing, to get blood out of any article of clothing, is to put peroxide on it, especially when it's fresh, but also works when it's dry.
Good to know.
Just
It's really good to know.
yeah, no, very very helpful.
Yeah, the
For-
mafia
I
is
get
very
bloody
happy to know
noses.
that.
Huh?
I get bloody noses
Exactly.
all the time.
Really? So if ever you get a drop of blood on anything, the best way to get it out, and if you can't do that, a little bit of salt and seltzer is really good. Soda water.
Got it.
So you can't pour any liquid onto an article of clothing or put the article of clothing into liquid. We also hold from different stages of the laundry process, which means shaking an article of clothing from the water that's on it, trying to shake off the water liquid. If it's dew, even from the morning, so you woke up in the morning, it was cold outside and your clothes are wet, we don't shake it off. And included in this general family of things that are asurim because of laundry would also be hanging things out to dry, which is also a part of the process. You take wool or cotton and you brush it from seeds and straw and excrement, etc., and then you wash it. It's going to decompose relatively quickly if you don't dry it at some point, right? Natural fibers they're biodegradable. That's the upshot and the disadvantage. So it'll get moldy and nasty, and so the drying process is married to the cleaning process. So we hold it on Shabbat, even if your clothes get wet, that you're not allowed to hang up in such a place that they're going to dry. This midrabanan, so people shouldn't come to think you did laundry on Shabbat.
So what about I
If you
come
had it
with my-
hanging before Shabbat, that's something else.
What about I come with my coat, whatever the weather, I hang it. So as I do it anyway, I would hang my coat or hang my jacket or my pants, whatever. So I'm allowed to hang it if it's dry, but if it's not wet, I'm not allowed. If it's wet, I'm not allowed to hang it, or as it's a habit.
You can hang it on a hanger. You can hang it where you normally would put it. If you're hanging it over a sofa specifically to dry it out, or you want to put it next to the heater, that's
That okay. If
separate.
I do it the same way I do it usually,
The way you do normally, just to take it off your back and to put it somewhere where it doesn't occupy
whether or
space.
not it dries.
That's something else, right? That's inconsequential to you. If you're opening it up, you ever see how people used to hang laundry? My grandmother has. Half my memories of my grandmother watching her doing laundry. They're putting it on the clothing line or taking it off. That's how they used to. In Israel, maybe until very recently, nobody had a clothes dryer. Huh? Like in Israel, you leave the clothes in the machine, they just dry up automatically. Everything. So you would take clothes out. You spread them out over the clothing line. By the time she was done with the 10th or 12th row, the first row was already dry. She would take things out. She'd go in.
It's usually these scarves, woolly scarves, so they're just...
Yeah, I don't know. The sun is very hot and the air is very dry. So, and by the way, especially when it comes to white clothing, the sun is also really good at taking stains out. It takes colors out of other clothes, but it's really good for most stains, especially natural ones. Anyway, all good things to know. So hanging it in such a way that it dries is sort of part of the continuation of this laundering,
You're not doing any
whitening process. So it's not that you're cleaning it; it's just that's part of how cleaning is done. And so hanging it to dry is midrabanan. So people shouldn't come to think Manuel Surani is doing laundry in secret in his house on Shabbat.
No, but I mean,
and he hangs the clothes up afterwards because he thinks nobody knows.
Generally, I hang my jacket in the closet, but I come. It's raining. It's all wet. I don't put it in the closet. I put it on a chair because I want it to not to get wet. Not to pour on
Right.
the other.
Well, you have to be a little bit more creative in your accounting. If you're afraid that some other articles of clothing are going to get wet because of your jacket, so we try to avoid getting clothing wet on Shabbat. So you hang it, but you wouldn't spread it the way that people normally spread it when they're trying to dry things out.
Okay.
So if I put it on the back of my chair, just so I don't get everybody else's coats wet with mine, because everybody came on time and you came late because you're Italian, and it started raining. So you don't want to get your wet coat on anybody else's. Okay, so hang it from your chair. People do that sometimes anyway, not because it's wet or it's dry. I do it now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we do.
Okay.
So that passes. If you're gonna put it on a laundry line, you're gonna hang it on something
Okay.
outside. Maybe putting it on a chair outside when you're eating inside, that's a little bit more suspicious. We'd be a little bit more potentially more concerned. But that's the general rule. What happens? What can you do if your clothes get a little bit dirty on Shabbat? So it depends on the nature of the dirt. It's never actually asur to remove an external layer of something. So if I had chocolate or ice cream or something spilled on my shirt, it's not asur. Take something like a knife and to pick it up.
Scrape it.
Take the superficial layer. It's asur for me to sit there and scratch at it, trying to get it out of the fibers themselves. I can't squeeze the thing in order to get.
Then with your
with it.
finger, you cannot like try to.
With your finger, because it's not the way these things are normally done. In other words, with your finger, you can try to get out with your fingernail. Get out what you can. What's asur is to squeeze it or to do anything that gets dirt out of the clothes themselves. In other words, if I say I'm wearing a sweater.
Mhm.
And I spilled something on the sweater, so I could take a napkin or a tissue, and I can try to remove what's on it, or I can just press it, squeeze it, and try to get liquid out of the fibers. That part is already asur on Shabbat. So you can get off what's superficial, whatever thick pieces or thick liquid you can pick up. But more than that, it's a little bit more complicated.
Let's say you have some dust stain, you can just do this and remove the dust.
Yes, although there was an opinion that said that you shouldn't be able to, we hold that it's mutar.
Yeah,
Actually, one of Yonim talks about this. The discussion about taking mud off of your shoes on Shabbat because they used to use it in order to make bricks. So, but when it comes to removing,
shoes is a perfect example.
shaking dust off of your clothes is not a problem. So if I have, like if I hang up something in my closet and I haven't used it, my winter coat from last summer, so it's got dust on it because I haven't used it. So shaking the dust off of it is one thing. It's not usually whether you would clean an article of clothing. If the clothes are wet and you shake them this way, this is normally what you do when you're hanging them out, right? That becomes an issue because you're expelling water from the clothes, and that's how laundry is typically done.
And what about shoes, you said? Shoes the same goes as same as apparel?
It's mutar to remove dust from your shoes. If you're wearing, for example, a nice polished pair of shoes, you can remove dust, especially when it's visible. But you can't polish them. You can't brush
But
them.
you can remove dust even with your hand on.
Yeah, you can remove it with a tissue. You can remove it with something.
Even with a tissue?
The dust
Dust,
on your shoes. If
Well,
it's dry.
But then it becomes like clean. That is a real, like what a shoe shine.
But
What
dust
do you
is
do?
not.
Shoe shine is you can't add anything to.
Shoe shining, you're polishing, you're coloring.
Right, I know, I agree. But if you think about the core activity of a shoe shine before even put the shine is actually taking a piece of cloth and just passing out. Just sweeping it around the shoe.
Like a brush.
Just if you do that without color, you're taking color off. That's what happens. You're brushing it hard enough. So if you have any, you want to take dust off of something, that's mutar. You can shake it. You can move it with your hands if you want. You can use a brush that has bristles on it. Nobody talks about this. They used to have stiff brushes for taking
So you cannot use, let's say, water.
No, you can't wash. No, which is an interesting question, by the way, because leather typically you have to be careful about how you clean it.
Right.
The simple explanation for this is that when you make leather, normally it's got to be stretched into a certain shape, and because it is a natural fiber, when you wet it, it shrinks back. So what happens to mezuzot when they're exposed to humidity is that in order to make useful parchment out of them, they stretch them and they sand them a little bit. But once the cloth is made, if it comes into contact with water, the fibers go right back to where they want to be, and then they move. So leather typically isn't cleaned with. You can clean it with liquid. Generally, it's not such a good idea. If anything, they'll use oils sometimes, or oil-based solvents, right, to protect the leather and to remove things that are inside it. But still, we hold that you shouldn't use water when it comes to cleaning things. You might, if you spilled ice cream on your shoes, you want to wash them and clean it off. It'd be
You cannot do that.
close enough. No, you can do it on Shabbat. That's correct.
So you say, let's say, okay, dust is okay because dust with it, but for example, like mud or even worse, like on the shoes when you.
Mud is complicated. Mud because they used to use mud in order to make bricks. You have a separate sort of megabel, where you add so adding water to cement, for example, would be the same thing. back in the day, this is how they used to make mortar. They used to make bricks. You take clay, you would bake it. It gets hard, and you can the building out of it. So we're a little bit careful about how you take off mud from your shoes on Shabbat, because it could potentially be resemble this particular shoe. So it's a little bit today. We don't do this so much. It's a little bit antiquated as far as we're concerned, but there was such a concern back then. I think also because the shoes back then were much softer. Today we actually like shoes that are a little bit more solid. Back then I don't know if they had the technology to make shoes that were soft and flexible but still hard on the bottom. So it could be that that shoes were softer and therefore it was maybe less. The sensation was more sensitive. Today, if you have a pair of boots, you don't even know what you stepped in. Okay. Clean them before you come to the house. You don't get the house dirty. It's not so much to care about the boots, but
Yeah, no, sure.
yeah. Rubber is not a fiber, but it is technically a natural material.
So then what do? Baby, 1.5 years old, eating banana, and banana stains are terrible. And
Yeah.
coming giving me a hug.
They get brown and black afterwards. It starts
Horrible.
out- yeah.
My
They look innocent
beautiful,
and yellow in the beginning.
my beautiful Shabbat pants that I really care about is ruined. I may have a chance to save it if I just spritz water on it or something.
Yeah.
What kind of trick? Is there a trick or something I can do, or should I just say Shiva on my pants?
Don't
hug
feed
your kids.
right. Don't feed the kids with Shabbat clothes on because it never has a happy ending.
Okay.
To give me, I have about 13 years of experience with this, and I haven't found. No, it's funny because when you're feeding kids, the minhag, I don't know why, but the minhag is to put a bib, on them, like as if you have any interest in protecting them from getting dirty. They don't care
Because they will get dirty anyway.
If anything, I should be wearing something. Like I'm the one who cares about how his clothes look. I have dignity. I have dot. I don't want to walk outside looking like a mess, and then they're gonna touch you with their hands. They're gonna try to. Anyway, but yeah. So there are a bunch more details to this particular.
So pretty much I change pants. There is no
basically,
except if it's just something that I can take
that
off
or you
like
wear
that.
You wear a towel or something
How's
over
that?
yourself. Put something on your
Yeah,
protective
well,
layers.
well, you know how
So
unexpected
for-
things can be. So there is no
Another
there is no
question-
guarantee, but it's okay.
Another question for me.
I just need to know.
You say that you cannot pour water or any liquid, but for example, I don't know, like there's a stain of like oil or grease, and you put like salt because salt on the stain.
Can I put salt on this thing?
Yeah.
Can you put salt on the stain or not?
Nah.
Talcum,
Yeah, I don't think I've heard the patent. It absorbs things. See, the only way to get something that's oil based outside of your clothing is either with a solvent like soap or laundry detergent, or by absorbing pieces of it. You ever see how they have like at gas stations? What do they do when they spill gas?
You put.
There's a certain kind of sand,
Yeah.
particulate that they put that just absorbs it, and they can pick
Yeah.
that up with a broom. And then
No, okay, but I say,
Solves
okay,
the
of course,
problem,
I don't do laundry on Shabbat, so I don't
Right.
put any soap or.
yeah, no.
But that's for the moment, I want to
That's
get rid
don't-
of the stain.
It's not much. What you're doing is basically you're trying to take
Yeah.
stain out of your clothing,
Yeah,
and
so you can-
that's what we don't do.
So you change pants.
Robert, since we're speaking about this, is there a concept that as soon as you try to remove a stain, and the more likely is that you would be able to be
Yeah,
successful?
because if I wait 24 hours, the pants
Because
is
that was
ruined
women
forever.
thing, like women were not very careful. I mean, not women, sorry. That's what people want to do, laundry cleaning
Right.
thing.
I have to reject the sexist nature of the statement you were about
You
to
see,
make.
I would correct myself.
I'm glad that
see how
I'm glad that
amazing-
you caught it, but
I
still,
self-correct myself, it was impressive. I had to let that to my sister.
it's not just women who care about their clothing and how they look.
Yeah.
And I personally was offended by that.
Correct.
But go ahead.
So, people in general, like for example,
Even in the
Russia-
slaughterhouse, people care about how they look.
people in general, like what happens is, let's say on Friday night, after the dinner,
Yeah.
and I'm just telling you based on personal experience, Friday night after dinner, there are all kind of stains on the tablecloth.
Yep.
You put the stain remover right away because you think that if you wait 24 hours, those stains are not never gonna go away.
Right.
So, granted that this is you cannot do that, but is it truly true that if you wait 24 hours, something that is going to be much more difficult to clean it up?
Right. So you're asking me like, as Hefsed Merubeh?
No, as an expert in.
Very stains.
No, as experience stains, right. So my experience with hydrogen peroxide is that blood that's 24 hours old depending on how dry it is, might still come out. It'll go from black to red to kind of dark greenish.
So what about that? Any besides blood?
I know.
I don't need it.
Because your Shabbat table doesn't end with blood on it. I don't know where you grew up. Depends what kind of guests you had.
That's Italian.
Yeah, the only claim you could make would be
Why?
Hefsed Merubeh, and Hefsed Merubeh, we spoke about this before you came. Maybe it's a mitigating circumstance when it comes to Asur Midorabanan. This is Midoraita. We don't really nothing much we can do to help. Adding water to it, or adding any kind of soap or any kind of stain remover, even pouring salt or talc on it. At the end of the day, is some kind of an effort to remove liquid or to remove whatever you can pick up without having done laundry. So, yeah, the answer would be an unfortunate no. Get tablecloth that's easy to clean. I guess would be the only solution. Or you could do what lots of people do in Israel, which is you get a really nice tablecloth and you put plastic on it.
Yeah.
So it looks nice and it doesn't make it. They sell those plastic sheets and all the Haredi utensils to.
With an Asgacha.
I know.
Yeah.
My roommate.
Your roommate has plastic on top of it.
We use
Yeah,
we
it's
don't even, we
classy.
skip the cloth.
You
We
just-
we just
go
have
plastic,
plastic.
It really doesn't serve much. I mean, so that, or you just resign to the stains of Shabbat. You just accept the fact that you're going to put out something nice. It's going to get dirty. By us, then I don't finish kiddush before someone spills grape juice on something. So either I put like a black or a dark purple tablecloth, or we just, it's okay. It's Shabbat and it happens.
No, I'm not control-free about stains. I think other people, not necessarily men, are control-free about stains. So it doesn't.
There isn't much we can do about that, because even if you were to take it and put it out in the sun, intending for the sun to take the stain out, it'd still be an aspect of kobes. So let's just take a quick break and we'll continue with some Chol Hashem Hara. It's actually juicy stuff what we have today.